it's Jennifer Conley here with Benchmark Mortgage, and I'm sitting down today with Jack Everson, the newly elected mayor of Chillicothe, Ohio. So congratulations, Mr. Everson. It's a very exciting time for you in the city. We have a few questions from a page. It's a Citizens Concerns page that's a spinoff of the Chillicothe, Ohio Facebook page. We asked some questions there to ask Mr. Everson today, so you guys can get to know him and know a little more about what's going to happen January 1st. So we'll go ahead and get started with those.
All right.
One of the main questions that we had was, what can Chillicothe do as a community to kind of steer youth out of, a bad situation or things like that? What can we do as a community to help our youth?
Well, I think there's three fronts that I'm going to focus on very early on, and the first one being is a tailored program where the Chillicothe Parks and Recreation Department works in collaboration with the YMCA. YMCA has certain strengths. The Chillicothe City programs have certain strengths. I think we need to combine those and work on top of one another to create a comprehensive program. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at, not only for the youth of the city and the surrounding community, but also put together a wellness program for the adults of the community, so that they're focused on physical fitness and mental fitness in combination with how those athletic programs get together, and even just yoga and meditation classes and things like that, but promote a more healthy lifestyle across the board of the city, so that our youth have a good example from their parents getting involved in these programs, and by example they take an interest in wellness as well as just the normal activities that their wife presents and the city will present in softball and baseball and thinking about putting together a pee-wee football league and things like that. So just on the sports end of it and the activities-based end of it, that'll be a good thing. And to help promote those, I've spoken about this before, but we've had two individuals move back to town here that are world-class athletes and perfect role models for our children. First being Gary Barris, the new athletic director at Chillicothe High School, and he brings just mountain presence and with him and accomplishments on the college level, on the pro level, and then in the business level after that. So very polished, very drawable person for our youth to try and emulate, and being in a position at the high school where he directs traffic towards that. The city's very interested in working with him through our Parks and Rec department and maybe the Pee-wee football league and city basketball league for children, just to kind of draw them into the disciplines that sports teach, as well as have a role model who's been through the entire process to its highest level there as a figurehead and kind of program director. So that would be one, and then the other individual is Toki Hill, a buddy of mine from high school that has just gone the entire gambit in the martial arts world. From the guy I knew in high school that was, probably heading towards trouble. Just he had an aggressive kind of attitude, but was a nice guy, but was just starting to get exposed to the wrong side of things, where people at that age make decisions in their life, and some are good or some are bad. Fortunately, he chose a good one. Got involved with a gentleman called Don Mattingly, who kind of took him and showed him martial arts, and he just went heart and soul into that, and all the way from just local competitions to a Olympic champion. He was in who's the actor, Chuck Norris movies. He's played in Chuck Norris movies as opponents and allies and fight scenes, and he's now for a third nomination of Olympic Coach of the Year. He's already won two, and he just got word that he's up for a third one.
Wonderful.
He has places in Lake Placid, New York. He's worked with inner city kids in New York City, and now he has a place up on the hill on Kelly Road. And
wonderful addition.
He opens up the programs to people that pay and come in, but another part of his offering is to expose the children that can't pay for his programs in a free federally funded program to learn the disciplines and the honor system and the respect that martial arts teaches along with the fighting skills. So it's not just teaching kids to go beat each other up.
No, that's definitely not what martial arts is.
It's an entire thought process and growing phase where kids learn the right way to think about things. And we have a role model there that I couldn't be prouder of. A buddy of mine that's made it big, and he's gone home and set up shop.
And that's wonderful. I mean, that's a thing that a lot of people don't even know.
Yeah.
You know, they don't even, I didn't know those things about him.
Right.
Garen actually spoke at my high school
Mhm.
many, many moons ago. I don't want to call Garen out for being of a certain age.
Well,
But I remember,
appreciate
but I remember him speaking at my high school,
Mhm.
you know, a long time ago, and that was a really big deal to have someone in our area in Southern Ohio. You know, we have a lot to be proud of here.
Exactly. And,
You know.
you know, two local examples of you can do it, and you
Right.
can make it big if you have the mental discipline and the facilities to do it.
Right.
So we want to help promote those facilities and work maybe sort of outside the box of city government, but to be involved in those kind of things and give our youth some options, give some viable options than living in a basement, dealing in a virtual world where
Right.
they're into video games and the Xbox all the time. Not saying that's totally wrong, or
Right.
kids don't need that little break from their daily routines to escape and have fun and compete, you know, over the internet and things. But it shouldn't be an all-inclusive or an all-encompassing world where that becomes their reality.
Right.
And they're really socially inept to handle what's really out
What's
there.
really going to happen, right?
So I think that kind of alternatives presented to the children is important. And like Toki tells me, he says elementary school is where you got to get, because
Right.
that's when they make their lifestyle decisions.
Right, absolutely.
And when they get to the middle school and high school, a lot of times it's kind of late for some.
Yeah.
So I think that that on the dealing with the root cause of the drug issues that the city's facing and teaching alternatives to that kind of lifestyle is really where you correct the problem.
And then one of the other questions are, what are your lines of communications that you're going to have that will be different from previous administrations with the public?
Well, I think that I've had a meeting with Exec, and we've talked about different methods of more open communication with the public, and just inclusion of regular meetings of the staff writers and the radio stations and the kind of things that are going on now. But we're calling some meetings early on, like a council orientation meeting before the first regular scheduled council meeting of the new council in January. That'll come on January the 3rd at, we're having a budget approval meeting at 6 o'clock. Immediately before that, we're going to have at 5 o'clock, we're going to have a council orientation prep for the new council members and get things on the table of how we can improve how the whole council process works. And the experienced council members will be there to tell us how they saw as opportunities or problems previously, and we'll address those and see if we can incorporate some ideas in there to just kind of get the word out a little bit better. And especially with the subcommittee meetings where things are really hashed out and decided, and there's a lot of discussion, and there's always community discussion in those meetings too. I'd like to see those a lot better participated in by the community
Right.
as a whole, because that's where the real voice of the people comes into play.
Right.
Council meetings that happen twice a month are just rubber stamp
And
of the
formality,
voting process, and the discussion's pretty much over with at that point.
Right.
And I've seen some things that are discussed in subcommittee meetings that never see the light of day in a council meeting because it's just decided it's a bad idea in a subcommittee meeting. So those kind of things, open up those meetings to see how city government really works would be a key feature that I think can be enhanced. The city website certainly needs scrubbed up. I think that needs to be not only updated, but more interactive. I mean, when you go on the site and look at the council people, we got Pat Patrick and Tom Russell with still black hair. And, time happens to all of us, and
Right.
it ain't so anymore. But
The bottle can help that, trust me.
right. So that not only the pictures, but the content certainly needs updated on that, and I think that needs to have a lot more features, a lot more links, a lot more two-way communication back and forth, where people can come in and if they have an idea for the city or whatnot, they can get that communication happening through to the proper channels through the website. So website updating would be something that it will happen fairly soon. And then, of course, the Facebook page here is a wonderful mechanism. I got my own page, Mayor Everson page, and like to use that back and forth as a vehicle for people on Facebook to interact with me directly, and I'll answer the questions as they come across, and we'll add that as a new avenue of communication that is not currently in play.
And I know in our last interview you said Twitter. You still doing Twitter?
I'm still not real proficient in Twitter, but
I'm not either, but
yeah.
it's a big thing. I mean, you know, and there are a lot of people in Chillicothe that do Twitter,
yeah.
so that's something too that you'll use those as well, your Twitter account.
You know, that Twitter, I think, is something I'm going to have to be more careful with, because it's a blog, and it's something where opinions are expressed, and now that I'm a mayor instead of a candidate, I think my opinions are more official in regard.
Right.
So I'm going to have to really kind of give that some deep thought into how I'm going to participate in Twitter, just so I'm not throwing things out there and then all of a sudden that becomes policy in people's mind when it's not really.
When it's not, right.
Yet. So, because I have a lot of ideas that.
Maybe we can find a class to take on Twitter. I can use that.
Find some guidelines,
Right.
see what we can do, what we can't do. But,
right.
You know, I'm sure there's other avenues where we can get the ideas out and discuss them and toss them back and forth without people assuming their policy.
Right.
So that's just a concern I have with Twitter.
Right.
That's a little more loose.
It is very limited. I mean, it's only 140 characters. Where Facebook, you can at least, you know, get more of your opinion out, not opinion, but more of your policy or more of what's going on. You can elaborate a little bit more than you can with Twitter, obviously.
I'm way too long-winded to say what I gotta say on Twitter, so, yeah.
I understand that. That's like why I did
So those are the few ideas. And then I think, you know, Bruce Arnold is, who I thought did a wonderful job as council president, started the town hall meetings, and I want to pick up on that and continue that on, because I thought he really hit the nail on the head with those meetings. And as a subset of that, I'd like to see ward meetings, regular ward meetings, sit down on a routine basis and have, you know, just the smaller, more intimate circles of neighbors.
Right.
True neighbors talking about the issues in their neighborhood, and that can have a 360 effect on back up to the administration.
That's a very good idea.
And do things with that. So I'll be talking to the council people about starting those up.
Well, and that really too, I think, holds the council people accountable to their constituents, and that's a very important thing. I think that's what a lot of politicians, you know, this is about my opinion, but I think a lot of politicians, not anybody here specifically locally, but that lacks even, you know, nationally and on a state level. So I think that's a very good idea to, you know, really get them to interact with their actual constituents.
I can tell you that the ward council people are very concerned with what happens in their wards, and I think just having the vehicle, the mechanism in place to accomplish this is what's lacking, not the desire to, because they go out into their neighborhoods and they do the legwork. And we have good council people, and the new ones coming in are equally as good. So where I steer the council of large people that don't have their own ward responsibilities necessary is to go help out where the help is needed in the wards.
Yeah.
So I think
well, it's just having a venue and having some direction. You know, so that's a great thing, I think.
And I've talked to Alan Davis, the incoming council president, about this, and I think he's on board with that. And so Alan and I have a lot of planning and plotting to do going forward, and the council is his responsibility, and he's the lead select dog in that, but certainly he's open to my input and my ideas, and I think together we can put together some viable programs to get the word out, but more importantly, get the word back in. So we know how the citizens are feeling, and we can put our programs together with their concerns in mind and do the right things for the community.
Right. It's wonderful. And what do you see in Chillicothe as you're going to be your #1 challenge for you and council?
Well, the budget certainly hasn't gone away. We just, last night at a council meeting, passed a resolution on the council side of accepting the AFSCME contract that Ed Buchanan and Tammy Bachert and Tom Spednagel just did a marvelous job putting that together, putting the information together in understandable terms that you know, the Eugene representative team could really grab hold of and see the logic in the city's side of the discussion. And the finances is certainly the driver of that. We don't want to go into 2012 with threat of layoffs or, you know, especially reduction in our safety services. We need to build those, not to tear them down. And so the wage issues, the healthcare issues are 58% of the budget. It's right there. So It's what needed to be tackled first. I think that the 4 months of negotiations that Ed and Tammy did with the union was a new sort of presentation with the addition of Ed Hanna on the city side of the negotiating team, and his experience, common sense, personality, demeanor all played into a level-headed discussion with the union, and that's where you get things accomplished in a union negotiation. So we need to have those same tactics used in the FOP contract, which we're currently in. That goes into fact finding on the 5th of January, and then later on the firefighters union contract. So we have 3 contracts that are all negotiated independently of each other, and we've signed a new health insurance program that takes effect the first of the year, and so that gets renegotiated 3 times, even though it's contractual. So this is where we need the cooperation of the city employees to come to the table and say, look, we not only want to maintain what we have, but we want to build. And until the economy turns around, we're going to need to play together. And part of the legislation last night was, hey, I'm not getting a raise my whole term. What Joe also left the table making in terms of wage and benefits is what I'll make my whole 4 years. I can't get a raise.
Right.
We voted that out last night. Tom Spetnick's the same thing. Sherry Rushford, the law director, the same thing. All the people of council. We all said, hey, we're not taking a pay raise for our full term, 4 years.
Right.
So, we got skin in the game in that regard.
I think that has to mean a lot to the city employees. And I don't want to interrupt, but I want to say to the city employees, thank you. Thank you for having good union representatives that realize that, we're in a situation. I just think there are so many cities across the country that don't have that kind of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
That, and I just think that, they've elected good leaders, obviously, for their union locally.
Yeah.
And, they care about the community, and, nobody's saying that's forever, but right now, we're all tightening our belt, or, our belts, and I want to thank all the city employees that have done that. That's an awesome thing for our community.
Yeah, and it's, it's down to the individual man and woman that do the voting, because it's a collaborative effort on their part, and
right.
They can overturn what the leaders of the union contracts bring back from the table. So, again, hats off to all the city employees. Stepped up big, and now we have to step up big. So that's the way we plan to handle that, and I think that's a manageable situation. Tom Spetnick has done a marvelous job with the budgeting and keeping the city viable in 2011, and that might be a little misleading that we have more money than we have, but we made cuts in certain areas that were necessary and kind of produce these results. But going forward, we're going to, in 2012, we get the second half of the cut from the state funds. That total $500,000 less into our general fund. And that's big money that needs made up to maintain the same level of service. So it was my campaign promise all along that using my experience in business and cutting costs and companies that I've been in, use those tactics in the city government and the city departments. And that is not laying people off. That is just looking for better, cleaner ways to do things and get the same results or better results out of a new way of working. And there are so many opportunities as I get deeper into studying the departments and talking to the people. Boy, the low-hanging fruit's there. I think that we can make up the budget shortfalls and kind of maintain an even keel with what the state's taking away from us. And we got to keep our eyes down the road of what's going to happen on the national level.
Right.
15 trillion in debt is a big amount. When you think about how much, we throw those terms around, billions and trillions, and I think it's interesting to put it in a different context to understand it. But if you look back a billion seconds ago, that was 42 years ago. So that was 1970.
Wow.
Was a billion seconds ago. So when you put it in those kind of terms,
it's so abstract.
The mass of that number takes on a new meaning. And when you think that $1 trillion is 1,000 billions,
right?
It's almost inconceivable.
Right.
And we're 15 trillion in debt.
Right.
So how does that money get made up? And the piper's gonna come calling sooner or later to pay the bills, and where does that come from? Keep printing money, and the value of the money goes down, inflation goes up. You're paying $10 for a loaf of bread. If you, the whole world's in this kind of situation, the euro's in trouble now, and that's kind of making the dollar look a lot better and kind of putting off the pain of how we're all going to pay for this down the road. So I think we're a few years away from having an upturn in the economy and things getting back to what we consider good old normal, if they ever get back to that level. So that's the kind of thinking we have to have going forward. We can't just look at tomorrow, we can't look at next month, we can't look at all of 2012. We got to look down the road. We got to look, 5 years down the road, and plan out how we're going to play defense against what could possibly come down from the federal level. And that doesn't mean crawling in a hole, but that means having an option A, B, and C if inflation hits at a high level, or taxes go up, or federal programs disappear. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, those are all on the hinge right now that are being funded on a daily level. That you and I aren't paying into Social Security for our retirement, and that money stays there.
Right.
We're paying for the people retired right now, and there is no tomorrow.
Right.
So that's a big issue, how we're going to handle that as a country. And you have to look at that. You can't be afraid of that. You have to be concerned with it, and you have to plan for it. So I'd rather have plan A, B, and C. Here's what we're going to do if this happens, and so we can respond to it instead of react to it.
Right.
And not be in a desperation mode or be caught off guard, maybe not have the entire right answer, but at least put the thought into it where we can have a better idea of what's coming and how we're going to respond to that. I think being fiscally responsible now and living within our means and having carryovers from year to year is an important part of that process. And frankly, the addition of Alan Davis as council president with this financial background, the city couldn't be in better hands in that regard. With Tom Spetnagle, with Alan Davis, and with my experience coming in as mayor, we're going to figure out ways to combat what could possibly come down the street. So finances is a big concern. Long answer to a short question, but and the drug problem. I think those side by side are two issues that really kind of capture my attention as to building contingency plans against that. And I think keeping the safety services intact, because both sides of that coin are used. Police department certainly to fight the drug traffic and crime that is secondary to that and is represented in that. But the firearms, so many of those are drug overdoses and domestic violence because people aren't in their right mind, and just those kind of instances that come up, and it involves both departments.
Right.
So we got to be strong in those regards. We got to have the way to finance those departments to their best suit, so that we can tackle those issues and try and eradicate as best we can.
Okay. And the last question we have was the main question that got asked. It's an explosive topic sometimes, but the armored car. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about that. Obviously, that ties to the budget. I don't think anybody wants our firemen our police officers to not be safe. I don't think that's a concern at all of any citizen in this city. But the budget is the concern. So, could you maybe elaborate a little on that and your views on that?
Sure. I think that in the campaign, I said that I was against the armored car, and that I thought that the money that the account that comes out of is also an emergency reserve to keep personnel on staff in case of imminent layoffs in the police department. So to have that money coming out of that fund at actually it's $209,000 because they got a little bit better deal on the purchase. There's a 2-year payback, and that kind of that doesn't strap the total account, but it certainly takes a hunk out of there that we could use to keep police officers on the street. And having that in place and ordered and approved by council by the time I became mayor, my thought process goes from we shouldn't be doing this, and what about it, to okay, it's a done deal. Well, what are we going to do with it? So utilization was my main concern with that unit when it came out. And is it just going to sit there and roll down the street in a parade, and that's it, or,
You've been reading Facebook, haven't you?
you know, people have been calling it Chief Moore's toy and all that, and, you know, I think a little empathy should be brought into play with this right now, because I've gone on a lot of ride-alongs with the police department. I've gone with a tactical drug team bus, where they use the panel van that they currently have, and that offers no armor protection. And just seeing the tactics that they use, and I'm not going to go into detail here because that will kind of delineate their effectiveness, but without the armored vehicle protecting them from potential gunfire at a drug bust site, they have to make provisions for that. And it involves delay in gaining access to the residents, and certainly some real safety features that for our officers that put them in jeopardy in between the dispatch point and the home. And where an armored vehicle sort of shortens that distance and really kind of provides them protection all the way through to where they can more effectively, more quickly, with more surprise, come in at a drug scene and do what they have to do and make the arrest. And you know, surprise is the key component in that. And when people are sitting there waiting for you with guns out the window, things can get nasty in a hurry. And just going along and riding along with that and seeing that firsthand. And then that was the Friday before the Saturday incident at the Brewer Heights, where we did actually call 2 APCs from Columbus down. You know, they went to the wrong site. It was like an hour and 45 minutes before they actually arrived on scene, where anything could have happened at that hostage situation and exchange of gunfire. So it goes from, you know, do we need it or do we not need it, to, hey, it's already on order and severe penalties for pulling out of the contract, so we're going to go ahead with it. But it's my intent to put that thing to use, and I'm talking about the main drug supply coming into Chillicothe, because that is a problem, and it's a growing problem. If we don't get a hold of it right now, some aggressive use, aggressive tactics, it's just going to get worse. So I want to send a clear message to people that deal drugs in Columbus and deal drugs coming up from Portsmouth or wherever they come from, that if you're going to come to Chillicothe and sell drugs, you're going to have a bad day. We're going to make it hurt to come in and set up shop and sell drugs in Chillicothe. And I'm not talking about people with a joint in the ashtray or, you know, prescription pills that they got, but through
legally, you mean, right?
Through legal means, but people that are coming in and poisoning our children and hurting our families. And I think that the message is going to be that you come in town and set up shop to sell drugs, we're going to put you in jail and take your stuff. It's going to be harsh. It's going to be mean. That's the only way you can deal effectively with that. And working with the judges right now, we're going to be getting together. We've already talked about putting some plans in place, some alternatives, clean up court time so that penalties can be paid out to the offenders. And I know we're tightening up on our available space in prisons right now, but I think that the top offenses need the top sentences, and we need the time to do that. So as we talk and we lay out our plans, we're going to be coming up with some measures to open up that court time and fill out adequate sentences for the crimes, because that's really the back end of the pipeline that's frozen up right now. Police officers can go in and make all the arrests that they want. And I talked to one of the captains when I happened upon the scene last week, and there was a drug bust that was in the paper at East Main Street. And he told me that the time before they arrested this guy, he didn't have enough on him to warrant a felony. He just had a little bit of heroin on him at the time. They just lessened the amounts that are in play where the sentences start kicking in. Well, actually, they raised the amount that you could have. So he knew he was under that threshold. He said.
So wait a minute, I'm sorry. They just raised the amount?
Yeah, they
lowered
the standards.
System, not our judicial, our legislative system.
Yeah.
Obviously, state or nationwide, they changed. They didn't lower it to catch more people. They raised it.
Yeah, the threshold where you go from a misdemeanor to a felony.
Right.
was, just for example, it used to be two grams, let's just say, and now it's 4 grams. Those aren't accurate numbers, don't quote me on that, but that's for example.
So more people are getting to walk away.
So you can have more drugs on you and still be classified as a misdemeanor, and that just recently changed, and he knew that. I mean, he knew he was under the threshold. He says, hey, I don't care, go ahead and arrest me, I'll be out done.
And then, yeah, the criminals know the law, right?
Well, he was over it the other day. So he's in the Grove Hotel right now, which is where he wants. But we need to, and that's frustrating for the police officers. Right. They go there and they know the people know this and keep it under that limit, or they know it's just going to get thrown out of court and they'll be talking to that guy on the street next week. Right. And so after a while, it's just like, why do we go through this? Why do we do this? So,
and that hurts their morale for sure.
It does, and it gives a sense of senselessness to their job. And certainly the work they do, we need to have them uphold the law, and the law is the law, and nobody's above the law. So I think we just need to clean the pipe out in the judicial system end of it, and so we can take the caseloads through and deal out the adequate penalties that are the questions. So, getting back to the armored car, I see a heightened use for that, and not that we're going to be bulldozing landlords' homes over, or any of the other gossip that would come on to people just imaginations running away with that, but utilizing that vehicle when it gets here is going to be a show of strength for the city police department and our intent for handling the drug problem in town. So we've already got it; it's already on order. We don't have it physically, but we're in contract for it.
And I think that's something too the public needs to understand, that once you enter into a contract for a purchase of that size, as a city, there's penalties, there's pending, possible lawsuits if you try to back out of that. So then money's being thrown away on those types of things versus maybe you would save a little bit of money, but that's just money just thrown away. You get nothing for it when you settle that lawsuit or pay that penalty. At least with this, I mean, it's kind of, you just make lemonade out of lemons at this point.
That's right.
It wasn't anything that you had any control over, but you've got to make do with what you've been handed.
Right. So, and I think putting best utilization of that and having some other things that in play that Chief Moore and I are talking about that can grow the city's presence of police officers without adding a lot to the budget, and that would be the entryway to become Chillicothe police officers through the auxiliary program.
Right.
And I think that's a good avenue to put boots on the ground for a relative low cost, and to where we're not raiding the payroll section of the budget for it, but we're adding headcount to it, and we're adding experience to that, and as the full-time officers work with the auxiliary officers, they can become part of the interview process and really the entryway to gain full-time employment in the city, and the same thing for the fire department. So I think utilizing some other programs that are available to us to compensate for a lack of manpower that doesn't threaten the union, doesn't provide an outsourced situation, which I'm entirely not interested in. I'm worried about scrubbing up and making our city systems better. We can both kind of meet in the middle and get accomplished what we need to accomplish, and be able to go ahead and get the payment of the APC out of the way and get that as a standard piece of police tactical units.
Okay. All right, guys, that's all the questions that we have for Mayor Everson today. Is there anything you'd like to follow up on, or anything that you want to add?
No, I just thank you for the opportunity to serve in this capacity to the city I love and where I grew up at, and very excited about starting in January and working with the people. And people thought that there's going to be a lot of room out of personnel, and that's not the case. Their experience and their dedication to the city thus far is a value to me, and we'll take that going forward with some new levels of expectations that serve the citizens the best use for their tax dollars. And we're going to go out and really be aggressive with what we have to offer the city. And I think that there will be tangible results that will be seen very shortly. So forward to having that opportunity to work here, and look forward to a little patience on some things that have been long-dwelling problems, but we'll work dutifully to get them straightened out. So thanks for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Okay, that's all we have for you today. I want to thank you for stopping in this morning and chatting with us. And we've got next up, Alan Davis will be stopping in to speak with us, and then we've got some things with the Carlisle. We're going to be speaking with some people from that group, so stay tuned. We've got a lot of good interviews coming for you guys. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching.